All right, we'd like to welcome you to this month's edition of Conversations with the Mayor, with Mayor Deirdre Waterman from the great city of Pontiac. And we're going to spend some time today talking about voting. And last month, we talked to the Assistant Secretary of State, Mr. Hester Willer. And we're going to continue the conversation because we know the national election is right around the corner. It's less than 2 weeks away. So if you're watching us on Facebook Live, we want to send you a quick shout out, say hello to you. Hope you're all having a great day. Mayor Waterman, good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining me for this month's edition of Conversations with the Mayor.
Good afternoon, and thank you again for being our host for this Conversations with the Mayor, this series that we presented a lot of pungent topics. And today, we're talking about the thing that's on everybody's mind, we hope, the elections upcoming November 3rd. Yes.
Yeah, the election is upcoming November 3rd, so we know that there's a lot of momentum. We know that there still might be, we want to make sure that people are crystal clear about voting across Pontiac and beyond. We want to make sure that they can vote safely and also have the opportunity of having the votes counted. We've heard a lot of news out. There's a lot of noise coming out of Washington, D.C. and across the country. So what we want to do is to take the next few minutes for you, the citizens of Pontiac, and clearly articulate for you exactly what's going on with the administration, what the city is doing to clear up any misconceptions. So, Mayor, let's start out with the basics. The election is scheduled for November the 3rd. And please share with us, from your perspective as the mayor of the great city of Pontiac, what is the city going to do in terms of getting people out to vote? What messages are you sending out to get people out to vote?
We've had a tremendous get out the vote effort for quite some time, and that is a collaboration with everybody in City Hall. You know, certainly our clerk's office, and particularly our interim clerk, and all the people that he has brought on board to hire this, as well as with the other branches of government. Certainly the county we've involved. They're going to be counting our absentee ballots, as well as the Secretary of State's office, who's been here a number of times to bring information to make sure that we're prepared and to give us the assistance we can have for the city of Pontiac to, number one, make sure people have the information about the voting, make sure they know the many ways they can vote, not only vote, but also to register to vote. And they're also to make sure that their ballots get in to the clerk's office to be counted and get in on time. And we know that we've heard there's some particular challenges this year. Earlier in the year, there was a lot of concern about the United States Postal Service and its
Right.
capacity and how it was running late in deliveries. So we wanted to be aware of that and give the people the information so that not only do we want more people to vote, and the clerk has done a marvelous job of getting out the vote early and extending hours and things, and we'll go into the details of that as we talk today, because this is about just getting the information out, making people show that they are empowered to vote, making sure that they're motivated to vote, making sure they know that their vote matters. Everyone's vote matter, and getting it in on time so it can be securely counted.
So let's let's talk about what the discussion was a couple of months ago about the post office and clear up any misconceptions, any issues pertaining to the postal service in Pontiac. It made national news, and so I'm gonna give you an opportunity to address that right now.
I think the national news was when the United States Postal Service director announced that they were going to be taking out some of the sorting machines.
Hmm.
The sorting machines are one of the things that we have gotten to know that in the larger metroplexes, such as the one we have here in Pontiac, are the things that increase speed and efficiency. So there was some concern that taking out these sorting machines was going to slow that speed and efficiency. And in effect, after that was done and that process was started, that there was found to be that people were getting delayed mail. That's just a fact. And it didn't just affect the last election in March, but it also affected citizens getting their pension checks,
Hmm.
getting refund checks, getting their payments in time for their mortgages. And to the extent that the United States Postal Service has acknowledged that's a problem, uh, from the clerk as they've been sending out the absentee ballot applications and the absentee ballots, he's now telling us, and we're watching very carefully to see what if there's any delays in people receiving that. And from the latest I heard, he said that most people had received their absentee ballots, to the far as we've checked, within 3 days.
Mhm.
So it's not as fast as the Postal Service was acting in their optimum, but it is not the delays that we were experiencing earlier in the year that was frightening to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in addition to that, apparently that process has stopped of taking out more of these sorting machines across the country after all the hue and cry came from every source about, was this a wise move as we're trying to encourage the electorate, particularly in a year in which the pandemic has affected the way we do everything. Okay, and we'll talk about how that's going to affect what people will expect at the polls as we want to make sure they vote safely. But in Pontiac, and I understand in other communities as well, the United States Postal Service has sent out an official card. I think that was received in Pontiac probably a month, maybe even 6 weeks ago,
Mhm.
advising people that they should not put their absentee ballots in the mail later than October 20th. October 20th.
Okay.
So that's a very important thing for people to know, because after making the effort to vote and to doing that in the right way, if the post office is saying allow at least 15 days just to make sure that
Wow.
your ballot is received. So no matter if you do vote and it doesn't get to the clerk's office in the right time, then it doesn't get counted. And we don't want that to happen. We want everybody to know and to be empowered to get their ballot to the clerk's office in time. So we're here today to talk about the ways people can assure that, and the way we have done in Pontiac. The clerk has installed the absentee voter ballot boxes. We want people to know what those look like, and to make sure if they want to use that and vote absentee, that they can make sure they know the methods of getting their ballot to the clerk's office on time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the October 21st day, obviously, I mean, October 20th, that was yesterday. Today is Wednesday, so Tuesday. And so you talk about, people dropping off their ballots and making sure it's getting on time. Have additional drop boxes been placed across the city at this point, or is it still or are you just having people just kind of drive into City Hall or the local municipality and just dropping it in that way? So in other words, have you noticed are there additional drop boxes across the city?
yes, they have. And if you would put that chart that we did, that we gave out all the information about how and where to vote in Pontiac. We did put a number of things in there, and that is now shown on the screen. But there are 7 drive-up, drop-off boxes, one in each of the 7 voting districts of Pontiac. There's a picture of what the official drop box looks like in the lower right-hand corner of this chart.
Mm.
And they are listed the 7 locations where those drop boxes are. You see in District 1, it's the Bowen Center, the senior center at 52 Bagley. In District 2, it's the fire station on Huron. And then we have several sites where they are at schools in collaboration with the school district. District 3 is the Walt Whitman Elementary School. District 4 is the Kennedy Junior High School. District 5 is the Harrington Elementary School. And then in District 6, it is again, a senior center, and that's the Ruth Peterson Center at 990 Joslin. And in District 7, that's where we have City Hall. And we do have a drop box outside on the drive entering into the City Hall complex. But we also have one inside in the City Hall complex. And of course, that's where the clerk's office is. And so many people have been personally bringing their ballots as they're completed and turning them in at the clerk's office. So those are secure ways for your ballot to get to the clerk to be counted on time. Now, the interim clerk is here, and I'm going to um, have him tell you about the deadline dates for getting your ballots in, if you would choose to do so. We also have that on our chart right here. But
Yeah.
for all these ways of voting absentee, and we were encouraging people to vote absentee because we wanted to have more people vote early, take that opportunity. The state had expanded those opportunities for people to vote early, and that's what we want to emphasize.
Yeah.
Vote early so that takes the pressure off of the polls, which we know are going to be affected by the fact that they've had to observe the precautions for safety due to COVID-19. So we have instilled all those practices of the 6 foot distancing, the sanitizing, all those things that the poll workers are being trained on, and all those things we want to assure people who like to vote at the polls. You know, I've always liked to vote at the polls and visit my neighbors and see the poll workers there, and say thank you to them for the effort, the long hours they put in to make sure that all of us get a chance to vote. So there are some people who want to go to the polls who didn't get an absentee ballot or don't want to vote absentee. So we want to make sure that they are feel safe about coming to the polls. So that doesn't eliminate this. But for all of those who do want to vote early, who do want to vote absentee for whatever reason, we want to make sure that they get their ballots in on time.
And let me introduce interim clerk Garland Doyle. If you unmute yourself, Mr. Doyle, let's engage you as part of the conversation as well. Uh, I know last month we had on Mr. Wheeler, Assistant Secretary. I had the opportunity to talk, excuse me, to Jocelyn Benson recently as well, and they were talking about the numbers of people voting early, right, through absentee. And the state of Michigan is obviously is having a record so far. So talk about the absentee ballots in Pontiac and what you're seeing as of October 21st this afternoon. How much are they up? Are people expecting delays at this point? What's the experience been so far with the absentee ballots?
So thank you. We have issued so far nearly 14,000 absentee ballots, 13,976 to be exact, which is about 3 times the normal amount of absentee ballots that we issue during an election. We've already had 7,212 people in counting that have returned their absentee ballots. So our return rate is at 51% now. So absentee voting is like 3 times what it was normally than 4 years ago in Pontiac.
But yet we're seeing across the country, Georgia, for example, we're seeing these long lines. 'Cause I know that early voting has started in those states. And technically, early voting, we don't have early voting in Michigan, right? We just have mail-in ballots and absentee. Why don't you clarify that for people checking this out?
That's correct. So we don't have early voting, we just have absentee voting. So you have to fill out an application to vote. You'll be given an absentee ballot. That ballot is sealed and not counted until election day. One of the things though that we've done to make sure that we don't have long lines, we've extended the hours in the clerk's office. So basically for the whole month of October, our office has been open until 8 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Thursday. And then we have weekend hours. We started being open last Saturday. We were open for 4 hours. This upcoming Saturday, we'll be open from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. Sunday, we'll be open from 10:30 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. And then next weekend, we'll be open basically a full day, 9 to 4, both on Saturday and Sunday.
And there have been
So by giving
questions
voters,
about, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. By giving voters these additional hours, that makes, to me, in essence, helps with lines. So in being
I think we just, I think he
He's
froze
a little
up.
frozen, yes.
Frozen.
I think it's the Wi-Fi sometimes gets interrupted, but what he was saying was all the efforts that have gone on to make voting more accessible.
Yeah.
And that is certainly a key point too we wanted to stress. Many areas of the country in which there's a battle over going accessibility in terms of making that ability to vote absentee is being challenged in some states in the courts and being fought out. In Michigan, we had a very progressive Secretary of State who made sure that the accessibility was granted. For example, registration, which used to be limited to a certain time before the election. Now there are ways where people can actually register to vote up until election day. There's certain guidelines for doing that has to be done for the Secretary of State's office, but that is still available. Whereas before, people who hadn't registered by a certain time were cut off. So that's extended the accessibility. Also the accessibility, but all the absentee ballot availability. The rules have changed for that. It used to be that you have to have a reason for that. And now an absentee ballot is made available without never needing to have a rationalization.
Yeah.
So that's great. Okay. So people, we're just trying to get out the messaging. And as you see in Pontiac, not only is the theme accessibility and security of the vote and get every vote counted. Those are the three messages. But also it's about in Pontiac, we are collaborative. We are all hands on board, that the democratic process is important for all of us to stay guard. So to that extent, I have made the facilities that the clerk needs to train the poll workers, for example. He had to train enormous amounts of poll workers to accommodate the increased vote and the other parameters of this particular election. And so the senior center, where he trains his poll workers, I'd had that closed since the emergency started in March 13th. But this was such a need that I said, I will open up the senior center so you can train these poll workers, and he'll be training them, he said, right up until the election date, a week before election. So we wanted to make sure that all the resources of Pontiac were joined together to make sure that the vote was accessible, get out the vote, and people had the right information. And so we're doing that in so many different ways. I
And
think Gavin looks like he's unfrozen now, so I
yeah,
think he was in the middle of
and
something.
Garla, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that. And as you're responding to what she's saying, I do want to ask you one other question. She invoked something else called the poll workers, and talk about whether or not people can still be trained and be there, obviously, on election day as a poll worker as well. So we'll give you the floor to finish your train of thought from when you were frozen to address the mayor's comment and also about the poll workers.
So yes, I do want to thank the mayor for opening up the senior center. It has helped because otherwise we would have been limited to training people inside of City Hall. And with COVID, we have to, do social distancing. But as it relates to poll workers, our goal was to recruit 250 poll workers. We're there. And that's with having some overage in case some people don't show up for the polls. We'll have a total of 21 precincts in the city of Pontiac. We'll have a total of 6 workers for each one of those precincts, as well as there will be a social distancing monitor at each one of our locations to make sure that people are practicing social distancing. We'll have sanitizers at each of our polling locations as well too. And although Oakland County counts our absentee ballots for us, they only count the absentee ballots that we receive prior to Election Day. So on Election Day, we actually have to count those votes at the precinct. So we'll have workers who will be counting those absentee ballots at the precinct as well too. So we've gotten a lot of support from the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. I think she recruited over 30,000 poll workers for the state of Michigan, and we partnered with her. So we got a lot of poll workers. And mentioning that, next week, October 29th, Thursday, October 29th, we're actually going to have a mock election training for our poll workers. They've been through a training session, but we actually wanted to give them the opportunity. So some of the poll workers will be acting as if they're voters. And then whilst other of the poll workers will be sitting there processing the same way they'll do on election day to make sure we work out any particular kinks in the process. And if anybody has any questions or needs any additional training. So that's the whole point of the mock election.
So I'm going to hone in on this thing called safety at the polls. There's been a lot of noise in the news, and Michigan's an open carry state. It was just announced the other day, by the Secretary of State's office and things as relates to open carry state. And we've seen in the news recently about, obviously, with Governor Whitmer and some challenges, and some people are suggesting they want to go to the polls and help you monitor the elections, right? So please, let's make people feel very comfortable when it comes to voting. And Michigan is an open carry state, so please reassure people that they're going to be safe. What are you doing to assure that people are going to be safe as they're voting in person? And talk about how close can people get to you? The people who are soliciting for votes, how close can they get to the front door or get to a voter before they actually enter the polls as well? So 2 different questions.
I'll let our interim clerk start with that, and I can tell you what we've done to
Okay.
recruit a phalanx of attorneys who will be on the call that day.
All right, interim clerk, we'll start with you, then we'll come back to the mayor.
So you have to be 100 feet. I'll answer that part of the question first. You have to be 100 feet away from the polling location as it relates to passing out literature or anything like that. And we will be enforcing that, and we'll have workers outside making sure that people are abiding to those particular rules. The mayor, and she can expound upon that, but she will have our city attorneys on staff at some of the polling locations. I believe we'll have about 6 attorneys that will be available, because although we have 21 precincts, we only have 9 locations. So there are multiple precincts at a location. So that can be dispatched to make sure that voters are indeed feeling safe at the particular locations. So, yes. And then again, we will be practicing the social distancing as well, too.
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes, I'm glad for the heightened attention to this election. The messaging is everywhere and the word has gotten out. So we're happy for the people who are lined up, bringing in their absentee ballots, getting absentee ballots, turning them in, that we witness that every day at City Hall. So people, as we talk to people who are heightened about this election process, have a heightened awareness. And we've done a number of PSAs, spoken to various groups. And two of the questions that I get in terms of safety relate to either the COVID-19, because so many people have been sheltered in and they're wondering what are the precautions taken at our polls to protect them if they do decide to come to the polls. And as you've heard the interim clerk talk about that, we have set certain parameters and guidelines for how we handle our city facilities, and those are being maintained, those guidelines for the election day as well. So as you said, he's all prepared with the sanitizers, the poll watchers, the safety distances, wearing masks. The poll workers have been trained in that, instructed in that, and that will be carried forward much as we have those standards for COVID-19 awareness and protection at any of the city facilities, and that will continue at the polls. Now, the other safety question I get, and that, as you brought to mind, is what's happened to our governor recently. All right.
Yes.
And that is very real to a lot of people. I mean, that was astounding. And the, kind of
Shocking to say the least.
that was astounding. And so all of us elected officials, are aware of that. And people are concerned because we see other areas where intimidation and voter suppression is being practiced and being enforced in very real ways. So to that end, we want to make sure that Pontiac is ready to have people feel protected and to be able to get answers if there are challenges. And certainly we have distributed information about your rights to vote. Can people challenge you because you're a felon? No, not if you've served your time. Okay. So we are prepared, and we have the city attorneys as well as some other attorneys that we have recruited who have been oriented in all the practices and the rules and rights of voting. And they will be on call. In fact, they will be monitoring the polls during the day. So if there are any questions that come up and they need immediate action, in some instances, you have to appeal to the court immediately for relief if it comes to that extent. But we just want people to know that, number one, yes, they will be safe going to the polls. And yes, if there are undue practices or some kind of threats of either physical or other kind of intimidation, that we'll be ready to handle that abruptly. If there's questions about eligibility that is being challenged, or people are being confronted in a way that's not allowed by law, then that will be handled. And anything the interim clerk's office can handle on spot, we have our city attorneys who are ready and connected with the Attorney General's office. And we will make sure that in Pontiac, people will feel safe and get the accurate information about the security of their voting process.
So someone, interim clerk is, or the mayor, anyone can respond to this question. And, they're standing in line and all of a sudden they feel like they're being intimidated by someone, whether, physically or whatever the case might be. As they're standing in line, what recourse do they have literally right then and there? Is there a number they're supposed to call, or will the attorney be on site, or will someone be on site that they can go and make this accusation, or what exactly do they do if they're standing in line on November 3rd and they feel like they're being intimidated? What's their recourse?
So I will have somebody outside that I mentioned that will be enforcing the 100 feet rule. That person will also be able to get in contact with the city. If they can't work out the dispute, themselves, they will be able to reach out to our city attorney, city attorneys, I should say, and get somebody immediately on site if it becomes a legal issue. But that's one thing. Normally, we don't have people outside of the polling location. All of our workers are normally inside of the polling location. But because of I'll just say what's being surrounded about this whole election, I felt that it was necessary to have somebody outside of the polling location too, because we don't want voters being unnecessarily turned away from the polling location before they actually even get inside, and that we wouldn't know that all these things are occurring. So we will have somebody on the outside of all of these polling locations as well too.
And I can give the hotline number if immediate assistance is needed. Mark, you asked, is there a phone number that people can
Yes,
call
please,
if
Mayor.
they have questions that they feel they want an immediate answer to?
Absolutely.
That hotline number is 248-758-3300. Okay, that is a hotline number directly to the executive office. And anybody who has a question, the clerk's office is also available, but they get swamped during the day, as you can imagine, handling the election. So we do have an outside, if you can't get an immediate answer in the clerk's office, there is a city hotline that is available. We'll be answering that throughout the whole day until after the polls closed, and people can reach that. And if we can get to an attorney who can give you a real answer on the spot.
As we're talking, this is being recorded. This is going to be posted across all social media channels across Pontiac and beyond. I would ask as this is posted on the city's Facebook page, can you highlight their phone number that people can certainly access? So it's right there on the city's Facebook page, any other social media channels, so that they know that phone number should be handy for them, so they can reach out if they need to reach out to someone on the spot via the phone.
Yeah. That's why we put out that information sheet, and if we can have our IT put that up again to share it, that number is on that sheet, and that is available in all of our broadcast networks. It's on our Facebook page, on our
Beautiful.
website, in all of these presentations that we present. We give the number, as well as it is on the new app that we have. Pontiac now has an app called Pontiac Connect. It is available from the Apple and the Google store for those who want to use their smartphones. And this again is the information sheet that we had prepared. And if you look on the bottom, it does have the hotline number, 248-758-3300, as well as the number to the clerk's office, 248-758-3200. So these are being circulated. They're available throughout all the city facilities, as well as the other media that I talked about. So that information is readily available for people.
Yeah, and interim clerk Garland Doyle, he's been kind enough to join us as well. Let's segue into our final concept or conversation this month as it relates to voting, is making sure the votes are going to get counted. Now, some people are saying, well, when should my ballot be in? So the elections on November 3rd, I think the polls are closed at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I believe, right? 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock?
8.
What time?
8
o'clock.
8 p.m.
So how long will you be voting to ensure that all votes are counted? Is that you need a 24-hour window, an extension, 2 days, 3 days, or as soon as 8 o'clock hits, you stop voting? I mean, you stop counting. Help us understand that process, please.
So the counting actually occurs, well, the counting is actually going on all throughout the day, but the numbers actually get posted after 8 p.m. And you do actually have until 8 p.m. on election day to return your absentee ballot. So we have drop boxes that are located throughout the city. So you actually have until 8 p.m. on election day to return your absentee ballot to a drop box, or vote in person at your polling location until 8 p.m. At 8 p.m., and if you're in line at 8 p.m., you will still be allowed to vote. You do have to be in line by 8 p.m. But if you return your ballot to one of those drop boxes, we will get those ballots to the precincts at 8 p.m. We will lock all of those drop boxes, and then our vote tallies are transmitted directly to the county, and that's where the vote tallies are in essence reported. So I believe because we have partnered with the county, we don't have to, and that's why we're really encouraging everybody to return their absentee ballots early, that we won't have to take days that, some is, as opposed to election day, they're saying election week, but the county has a lot of high-speed tabulators.
Mhm.
So I believe that our counting can be done within, several hours. So you will know the results from the city of Pontiac um, on November 3rd, or maybe, slightly after November 4th, after 12 a.m. when it's actually officially
So
November.
what happens, before I go back to you, Mayor, um, one final question in that space. So if I drop it, I understand you want people to drop it off. I get it. But if someone still mails it, when does it, if it's in the mail, when does it have to be postmarked in order for it to be counted?
It still has to be received by the clerk. So it would have to be delivered by the mail carrier on November 3rd to us. So what we do on November 3rd is we go to the post office several times throughout the day. So to make sure that they don't have any ballots at the post office that are waiting to be delivered. So we make sure we try to get all the ballots before 8 p.m. because we have to have your ballot before 8 p.m. It was initially, I believe it was Judge Stevens who had made a ruling that if your ballot was postmarked on November 2nd, it could still be counted as far as 2 weeks after Election Day. But the
That's the
Court of
question.
Appeals struck down that ruling. So you must have your ballot into the clerk's office by 8 p.m. on Election Day to count.
Got it. Mayor, I'll go back over to you. As we're talking, if you're tuning in, we're talking to Mayor Deidre Waterman and interim clerk Garland Doyle about this important topic, the national election and the local election. Look, it's time to get out. And I voted. I've already dropped. I literally voted I actually voted 3 weeks ago and still drove my ballot where I lived, and I dropped it in the drop box. We're encouraging all of you to get out and do the exact same thing. Fill out your ballot. Don't be intimidated or afraid by what you're seeing on the news, on the long lines in Georgia, long lines across the country. Michigan is not an early voting state. Yes, you can mail in your ballots. You can drop them off. You hear what the interim clerk, Mr. Doyle, is saying. You hear what the mayor is saying. This is an election. This is an important, one of the most important elections of our lifetime. And you hear the mayor of the great city of Pontiac trying to tell you they're making it accessible for you. They're making it safe for you. They have drop boxes across the city. She's got the times mapped out. They opened up additional buildings across the city to ensure that people can vote safely. Mayor, I want to turn back over to you for any final comments, anything that you want to say in closing as we get to this important topic of voting.
Well, I just thank you again, Mark, for helping us with the messaging. That was so important because so many things were changing this year with this election particularly. And it was so important to get out the messaging so people could have their vote count. And the theme of that is your vote matters. And I'm enthused by the number of people who have heard that messaging, who feel that, as you've said, it's an important election. Some people have called this an election for America's soul. And I think maybe people understand what I'm talking about. But I'm excited about the numbers that are turning out in Pontiac to exercise their democratic right. I was at an event for Get Out the Vote this weekend, and their registering to vote was a young man who had been brought by his parents. He was 18 years and 1 month, and this was his first election ever. So he registered to vote at that event, and then they walked him across the lawn to the city hall because the clerk was going to be open for that weekend, and he went and he voted for the first time ever. So we took a photo of that op, and I'm just, that's just an example of the kind of enthusiasm and the importance. We just want to make sure that that is well requited here in Pontiac, that we're ready, that we're available, that we're collaborative, we're all working together. I've even given my city workers the day off if they also help with the election and work for at least 6 hours. So we've got some takers on that. But we're all hands on board in Pontiac to make people are safe, secure, enthused about this election, have the right information. And I thank all the groups that are working with us on the grassroots to get that messaging out. And I'm going to give a shout out to some of the groups that I work with, particularly my links chapter. Every one of the links is charged with going and calling at least 20 people and passing that message and saying, do you need help getting your a plan together and do need help getting your ballot to the election. And don't forget, people, vote absentee, sign the outside of the envelope.
Just sign it.
Sign the outside of the envelope, please. Remember to do that. And also, if you want to track your ballot, this year the Secretary of State has a way that you can track your ballot to make sure it's received and how it's processed along. And that can be done at the Secretary of State's website. Also, our clerk's office, if you call, they can also track it. So there's so many things that have been put in place to make it easier to vote, to make it secure for you to vote. And we're happy that people have the right to vote in Pontiac, and that we're all working together to make sure that's accessible and safe.
And before we go, couple of announcements. One is you're going to be part of a town hall, I think next Wednesday. Why don't you talk to us briefly, talk to those viewing and who'll be viewing it later. Talk about what this town hall is and the importance of it as well. And then you have a special radio appearance coming on this Sunday as well.
And that's your show. Mark Lee, thank you for inviting me again. As I know you've doubled down on the importance of this election and talk about some of the special thoughts about this election in particular and the meaning of that for the American citizenry. So that will be at 12:30, 9:10 a.m. This Sunday. So thank you for that invitation. I'd be glad to join you again. You always have such insightful talks. And I think you have other guests who will be there as well. And then many of the elected officials are joining forces to get the messaging out. And I've been invited to by the Wayne County executive, the esteemed Warren Evans, who's also having a town hall on the election from 7 to 8 p.m. next Thursday. Thursday, October 29th. So we will be there for that. And there's many other groups who are doing that messaging webinars, making sure that people have the right and correct information. So
outstanding.
yes,
And
thank you for
lastly,
reminding us of that.
you were just announced the vice president of
The Michigan Municipal League. Yes, I was honored by the Michigan Municipal League is kind of the lobbying arm for all municipalities in the state of Michigan. And so they elected me their vice president, and I will be working in tandem with the new president, and that's Mayor William Wild of Westland. We have worked together on a number of the projects, and he, like I, have been working to getting out the messaging across the state about the MML and the way they can support that, and as the rulings have come out, to make sure municipalities are informed about that and have access to all the resources that are available. So thank you for mentioning that. Yes, I'm very pleased and honored to be the vice president of this esteemed organization.
Well, congratulations. I want to thank all of you for joining us. This has been recorded. It's going to be posted as soon as this is over on all the social media platforms across the city of Pontiac and beyond. It's going to be across other platforms. We're going to ask you to share with us many people as possible, because this is an important conversation and we want as many people to see it and view it as possible. Mayor Waterman will be on with me Sunday at 12:30 on 19 a.m. Superstation on In the Conference Room with Marquez Lee. We're going to continue this conversation there. You can check her out next week as part of the town hall with Wayne County Exec Warren Evans as well. So you can see that Pontiac's got some great steps in place to ensure a safe election, to ensure that your vote is going to be counted. Garvin Doyle, I want to thank you very much for your time today as well, for joining us and giving us additional insights. Mayor Waterman, thank you very much for your time. And for all of you who are watching, we thank you all. Make it a great day. We'll check you out next month on In the Conference, that's a radio show on Conversations with the Mayor that we have each and every single month.
Can I give a little tidbit trailer?
Absolutely.
The next, which I think we have scheduled for November 18th. And the subject of that is going to be a launch of the Pontiac app that Pontiac will be announcing. It's a prototype that has been brought to us, into which we're bringing yet another broadcast network to increase communication in the greater Pontiac community. It's called Pontiac Connect. It is available now in both the Google and the Android and the Google store. So people can load it up, and we're now populating that with information and highlights about Pontiac. So, but we're making that official announcement November 18th, and we will use that as the highlight of the show at that time.
Great.
So
Thank you,
just a headline.
Okay. Absolutely. And I'll go out and make it a great day. We'll see you next month. Take care.
Thank you.